Okay, welcome back to DCS Apache. We're going to do a video just to talk about the checklist use in the 476 in the Apache, just to kind of run through how the checklist's used, just because it looks a little bit different to some of the ones that that are in the jets, and obviously there's a bit of crew coordination to do when you're using these checklists. So we're going to do another video later with someone in the front seat or the back seat maybe, and talk about how we coordinate these between the two crew. But in this first video, we're just going to talk about how we use the checklists. This is version AL3 of the 476 checklists that we're using for reference, and we've pulled out some of the pages. So just jumped into the back of a cold start Apache, and the first thing you'll notice about these checklists, or the first thing to know about these, is that they're designed as kind of do verify checklists. So essentially the intention is that you're going to run through these and then use the printed checklist to actually just double check that you have actually done all the steps. They're not necessarily designed to be followed item by item in a sort of challenge and response technique, although there are some bits that are probably better run like that in the Apache. So we're going to do this in the back seat, but pretty much everything we're going to talk about applies equally in the front. So when you first get in the aircraft, the first thing to run is the interior checks, and these are essentially designed as a flow around the cockpit going like this, obviously. Canopy door we're going to leave open. Seat adjusted isn't relevant to us. Pedals. Controls check and cycle, or we've actually added this to the front seat as well, just in DCS, just to sort of get both people's controls synced. Sometimes if you haven't moved your axes from the very get-go, then stuff goes a bit haywire. So we're going to travel all the controls to all the limits, and what you need to do at this point in the checklist is just the person in front takes control after they see this moving, after they see the pilot do it. Just take control in the front, cycle your controls as well, so that you've both gone through the whole checklist. And then we're going to come. So we've done this. We're across to here. The parking brake is set. We're going to go down to the generator reset panel, which is down here. Check that those are both off. The wiper controls off. Collective switches you can't actually see in DCS because they're not animated, but you just check that everything in your collective is in the right place. Utility light actually doesn't work. Interior exterior lights panel. So for the 476, the 7th CAV standard, we're going to leave all the lighting for day off except the anti-coils, which are going to go to white. And actually at this point I always just put the primary lights up as well, because I'm going to need that for the IHEADS check. Where are we? Here. Stores jettison the next one up. Check that nothing's obviously selected or selected. Power levers are indeed off. The engine start switches are off. Rotor brake switch is off, and the emergency zero eyes panel is not in the zero eyes position, which is good. NVISN mode off. Video panel, we check these settings if you sort of have pre-ideas about where these are going to set. In the daylight I tend to just whiz that up a little bit at this point, and then at the same time you've got the KU and the MFD, so I'm going to take that up, that down, and check this is full bright. Master zero eyes, guards down and not down, and then we're going to come over here to CMOS and the standby instrument. So CMOS should be in CMOS, auto, and safe with the guard down, and these set to whatever you want. That's per the checklist. Probably quite a lot of people are going to do that, put it in actually in bypass from this point. And then the standby instruments, caged, reading 0, and then you're going to set this for airfield elevation, which looks like it's 2992, maybe 500, I think, for this airfield, but whatever. I tend to actually set that at this point before I've started. And then the comm panel, make sure your squelches are on for all of these. This in SRS currently does your intercom volume, so that's got to be up, that's got to be up. HF I'd probably turn down a little bit. FM1 tend not to use, probably turn that down, probably turn that down, probably turn this up a bit, and then set these as you want. So that's your cockpit check, and then you are basically ready for the battery. So this is the point at which you're going to wait for the co-pilot to in some way signify that that they're ready, either using the kind of hot mic SRS shouting over the cockpit type thing, or close the door. And then you're going to go battery, searchlight on. That's in there if you're using the searchlight as a signal to external crew that you're going to start the APU, but we probably aren't going to do that, so as required in our case is off. Tail wheel button, verify locked, so you haven't got an unlocked indicator there, so you go from there to there. To emergency hydraulics, that is off, and that is basically the three things you have to do. That. Then we're going to come across here and check the intercom. So what we do is just go to hot mic, check with the person in the front that we're up on hot mic, go to PTT, key PTT and check with the person in the front that it's working. They do the same back to us, hot mic and PTT, and then select whatever intercom volume we want there. Then we're going to do the lights check. So come down here, hit that, quick scout out of the cockpit, all the lights work, they go off, and they're going to start the fire warnings check.
Engine 1 fire. Engine 2 fire. APU fire. Aft deck fire.
And then you're going to verbalise that out loud into the person in the front that you've got 3 lights, an EFID warning, a master warning, and the audios. You're both going to cancel that. Then you're going to do test 2. Fire. And I've got 3 fire lights, 2 discharge lights, aft deck fire light, master warning, and all the audios. Cancel that. Then the person in the front is going to do the same. And they're going to say that they've got everything, you're going to confirm in the back you've got everything, and you've done your fire checks. And the next page, starting the APU, not very exciting. Guard, press. Personally, I tend to put the guard back down for no reason other than when I go to click on stuff over here, I accidentally click on APU and switch it off, and that's bad. So APU powers on, APU start, indicators come on there. Cancel master warning, master caution. We can see stuff coming up here, and at this point for volume I'm going to close the door. We didn't use external power, and then we're at the after starting APU part of the checklist. So canopy door, external and internal lights panel, we don't need to fiddle with that because we've already done primary lights. KU, MPD, EFID knobs, well, we've already preset those when we went around the cockpit. So then essentially we've just got a couple of items that we're going to do in the back seat specifically. So here's the load page. Obviously at the moment it doesn't do anything, so EGI, verify the keys, that doesn't do anything at the moment. If you want to go to TSD util, you can see GPS keys. It says it's loaded. And then you're going to go to the flight, set. In the current version switch the radar on, but that should be on automatically. And then you're just going to do your altitudes across the top here. So pressure, low, let's just put 20 feet in. There. Yeah, so you're going to set those settings in there. And obviously if you want to change that, now would be the time to do that too. Come back out. So that's the sort of mandatory first steps, is just load, GPS keys, flight page. And then it's got this rather vague section that says menu page, systems configuration. And we're actually just going to come back to that in a second, because normally in the back seat, what I tend to do first is go to IHADS and the MVIS operational check. And the reason for that really is to deconflict between the front and the back seat. So if the person in the back seat goes straight to this, they can check their HDU symbology and their flares, while the person in the front's pressing buttons, and then you sort of swap round, and that tends to mean that you're not trying to fight over the TADs and the IHADs at the same time. The FCR is generally going to be done by the backseat pilot when we get it. Meanwhile, the person in the front is doing the TADs, because obviously they're the only person that can do that. And once you've all run through this, you're going to essentially meet together at weapons operational checks and do those as a crew. So we're going to go straight to item 7, the IHADS bore sight. And we're going to actually bring that page up, because there's a few steps in here that maybe aren't super obvious. So the first thing we're going to do is site select HMD, which we have already got, pilot HMD. Weapon page, it tells us to bring up the weapon page and go to grayscale, which is going to bring this cool little thing up, and actually just check that we've got the IHADS adjusted. So this, you should be able to see all the scales, and we can change this, and we can change the contrast. So I'm actually going to set the contrast up a bit and the brightness up a bit, because it is daylight. So let's do that. Let's turn the watch brightness down. Okay, so now we've done that. We've verified that. We can deselect grayscale. We're going to go with just symbology brightness, and then we're going to go weapon. This is a bit that everyone's familiar with. Bore sight, IHADs. We've already done the lights, so we've got our circles. Make them concentric and make them aligned. Click. And then unbox bore sight. We should be bore sighted. Then you can turn your primary instrument internal lights down. You don't need those anymore in the daylight. And then the NVIS ops checks kind of flow, if you like, directly from there. So then you can flow straight into your PinVis checks. So we're going to put the PinVis into, just for argument's sake, we're going to put it into fixed down here. And what I tend to do at this point as well is bring up the video page down here, because sometimes it's worth just checking out how your video looks down here as well. So we've brought that up, and what we're going to do is just level and gain on the FLIR. So I'm going to kind of try and optimize it, kind of based on the video page. And it's daylight again, so I'm going to kind of make this a bit deliberately like overdriven, so I can see it through the aircraft. That kind of looks a bit too bright on there. And then I'm going to bring up my PinVis and do a bit more tinkering. That looks kind of good. Okay, and adjust for optimum image and make sure we can get various flight modes. So I'm just going to check in norm that I can see everything through the aircraft. Like if I was looking down at a landing site, I can actually see. And actually, particularly if you're in the back seat, it's worth just taking a minute to check. You see, this is kind of washed out. I might just bring that FLIR contrast up a little bit more. Okay, that's better. You kind of want to be able to put it over here if you're trying to look down through the aircraft and it actually be able to see it in the daylight. So so there we go. We're gonna use that setting. We're gonna check the polarity reverses. So check we can on the collective we can do white hot and black hot, which we can. I think pretty much everybody probably flies in this mode, but you know, other options are available. And we're going to check the registration, and for that what we need to do is find something at the front of the aircraft and check that it's in registration, which it looks, I mean, it looks kind of close enough, doesn't it? And it gives you some guides here. So so it says in here 90 feet and check the registration. 1 foot and the center open position, so between these dashes, is 1 foot at 90 feet. So that's kind of quite a big gap you're allowed, you know, at 30 meters. So that's within registration, and everything looks the right size. So it's 1:1, which is good. We're going to check that we can get the alternate sensor. So we're just going to flick over to TADS, and again, that's something you probably want to say to the CPG, like, I'm taking TADS. And I'm back on PinVis. We've already checked that fixed works as well, and it does give us fixed. So that's checking the NVIS, and actually it's definitely worth taking a minute to optimize this well if you're going to use it in flight. And then we can take the NVS off, and we're just going to check we can get all the symbology, which we can. Go to hover. Cool. So we've done essentially this, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go into these pages down here, and I'm going to take the IHADs away, and I'm just going to come down here, and what I tend to do honestly is just pick one display and just work that one display, and I'm just going to go to the menu page and start somewhere. In the back seat I tend to start here, and in the front seat I tend to start here. So in the back seat I'm going to go into engine. Is there anything in there I need to do? I should probably just reset the warnings. System, generators are on. flight page, we've already set everything in there. Can't think of anything I need to do. If I was going to do G bias or anything like that, I do azimuth bias there. I'll do that now. Fuel, aux tanks on. Check your transfers correct. This would be where you'd set your bingo if you could, but we can't at the moment. Performance. Check that this matches what you think it should say from your performance planning card. So this would be definitely the backseat responsibility to go into here, look at current, look at the altitude, air temperature, weight, check it against what you put in the PPC. Do these match, which they should, obviously, and then those should all match what you're getting on your PPC. We can't do that at the moment. You can go into plan or max and actually put some values in, but they still don't match what you get out of the performance planning card and off the data. We can't do anything can't do that at the moment, and there's no point going in here because the weights, as far as I know, nothing's really working on this page. So I don't know if at some point we are going to have to put pilot weights in and things like that, but you can see at the moment everything's zeroed out. So that's kind of wipe along the bottom. Com, we can come up the side, so we can go to the com page. This is where we could we'll come in here and put our radios in. This is probably something the front seat is going to do, and if you are doing these things that both of you could do, then it is worth just calling them out. So in other words, hey mate, I've done the radios, hey, I've done the radar. So just so you let the other person know what you've looked at. Generally, the person in the front is going to be looking at the radios, the TADs, the mission data, and the person in the back is going to be kind of doing those things along the bottom. So in com manual, VHF, that's just going to put guard in. UHF dual watch guard, obviously you could put your presets in up here via the EFUD. We can't do them here, or you could put stuff in manually here. In UHF, we've now got the ability to do secure. So com UHF set. We can go into Cypher, and we've got it now. The very next version of SRS, I think, that's in beta at the moment is going to have that, so that's available. There's nothing else. I mean, you can do these settings in here as well, where you can tune the manual frequency, and at some point we should be able to tune the backup frequency as well. So set your radios. Transponder, again, doesn't work at the moment, but do need to set that if anyone's using not ATC. Set your preference pages, which again doesn't work at the moment, but that would be useful. And then, so when I'm in the back seat, I've gone all the way around here. I get to video. I'm going to go to video, and this is probably the one place where I do go over to the other side. So if we were using the aircraft tactically, then I would certainly in the back seat I would put video up on the left-hand side. So I'd probably go to CPG site and bring their flight symbology up there if I wanted to, or just CPG site as background video, and then come back out and have their video in the background. Got round to video here. Going to come back down this side. ASE, the person in the front may already have done this. Auto page, that's independent between the two cockpits, so you definitely need to come in here every time and do it yourself because you want your own choice. Personally, I wouldn't auto page the TSD in search modes for every search radar, so I'd either use acquisition or track, and in the back seat I'd probably use track. Because if I've taken the TSD off this page, I've probably done it for a reason, and I don't want it to pop back up. Chaff, safe on the ground, obviously program mode, normally going to use chaff program mode, and in utility we're going to go in here, and just while we're here, we'll talk about our standard chaff program in the Apache, which should be that for 6 chaff, minimal burst, 1 salvo interval not relevant, 30 cartridges. Switch on your radar warning receiver if you want, and if you want to have the sort of shorter voice warnings, so that it doesn't call out the azimuth and stuff like that, it just gives you the quicker voice warnings, then switch that to terse, which does work. Go back to here, and then the big one you kind of got round here, and we said we were going to end at weapons checks. So in the back seat you've then got two big ones to do. It would be the radar, which is a fairly significant chunk of checks to do, which sort of matches up to the guy in the front doing the TADS, and then the TSD. And when you come into TSD, what you essentially want to do is your own sort of preference setup. So personally, what I do is I would come in here. In the back seat, actually the first page I'm going to go is to instrument if I'm planning on using the ADF. So I'd actually go into if there's anything in here that I want to set from the on the ADF, then you can do that in there, and then utility as well do first. And just we've been in here once already. Just check the Dopplers on, and by this time. We've gone all the way down there, up there, across there, down here to TSD. We should have a good alignment on the two INUs, and you can see that we do. So if you want to set up any anything with ADF, and you want to come in here and switch the ADF on and do things, you know, ADF on, that's going to make noise. This is the time that I would do that if I was planning on using it. If I wasn't going to use it, and it was VFR, I might just not come in here at all, but it could come in here and hit tune, and yeah, there we go. Come back out and come back out. Coming across the bottom, we're going to get to nav, and we're going to do our nav page settings. So nav, first thing to do is to configure what you want this to do. So I'm going to go map, chart, choose a scale, like that. In the nav mode, I'm actually going to go to center. I'm going to go to show. I'm going to bring up the cursor info. I'm going to take off the endurance. I'm going to leave the wind on, and these are just my personal preference. I'm going to go to threat show, which this pretty much I don't think does anything in DCS at the moment. Coordinates, and I'm going to put plan targets and threats on there. Can't put line scenarios on, so we've got control measures, plan targets, threats in navigation mode, and that is pretty much all I'm going to do in nav. Then I'm going to go to attack and do the same thing. Cursor info. I always switch current route on. I'm going to take off inactive zones. I'm going to take off endurance, leave on the wind, go to threat show again here. I'm going to put all of these on in attack, so planned, enemy, friendly, whatever. So they're all on. So now I've got two different views for nav and attack. We're not showing there. Route. And then the final thing I'm going to do in the nav phase is just show the HSI. So that's my settings, essentially attack, nav. Unfortunately you can't have the center saved between the two phases, because that would be, I'd probably run like that in nav and then that in the attack phase. Anyway, got down here. Bam, this is where you can do battle area management. This probably is something the front seat is going to mostly do if you want to create priority fire zones or no fire zones, or draw any graphics on the map. And we'll talk about that in the future. Map we've already set. Normally run track up. 2D, 3D doesn't work at the moment. And choose some scales. What should happen with the scales is when you choose a scale for each zoom level, it should stick, but it does not at the moment, so you have to keep reselecting them. If you want to get around that, probably easier just to go to digital and then do color banding on aircraft elevation. This is quite useful in the back seat, so if you want to just have that running, that will stay across most of the scales, and then satellite will stay until you zoom out to 50k, and then it'll disappear, go to stick, which is kind of annoying, but for 25k scales and below, you can just sit with the sat map up. Route, obviously, hopefully someone's programmed in the route, you can build it, and then you don't need to check any of these. Axe source, pretty much off the ground. I'd probably go GHS, but other options are available, and then you don't need to do anything down here. So that's kind of the wipe round the TSD, and it takes a little while to get your kind of TSD set up until you get a nice flow for doing that. Going back here, so we've done TSD. We'd go to radar, and then hopefully, if we go back to our checklist, we've now done all of this. ASC we've done. Double check the CMOS at that point as well. And then we'd be at weapons operational checks, and this is where we kind of meet up with the guy in front. So we're like, okay mate, I'm ready for weapons operational checks, are you? And you know, if there's still tasks remaining to be done, then you just divide them up. You know, someone's still coding in waypoints, someone's still building the route, you know, then you can just, at this point, once you've kind of finished what you think you need to do, you've configured your pages the way you want them for flight, then you kind of divide up what's left, and once you've done everything that you can do independently, you meet at weapons operational checks. And the weapons operational checks we'll do when we talk about the having two crew in the aircraft with somebody else. But essentially, what you're both going to do is you're both going to pull up the weapons page, and you're both going to select sequentially each weapon system. So the first thing you're going to do is check that the ground override works. So someone's going to go ground override on, arm on, and then both people are going to confirm, yeah, I've got arm on weapons page, okay, cool. And then they're going to go back to safe and take the ground override off. And then, sorry, leave the ground override on because you need that towards the weapons. And then you're going to step through these weapon pages and do check that you can both get at them. Now, if you've configured stuff, up to this point, there's some things that you probably have configured. So, for example, hopefully someone's gone in and put in like laser codes into the missiles and the TADs, and I would suggest again the front seat is probably doing that, as with the TADs they're putting in laser codes into TADs and putting them into the weapon system at the same time. But there might be things, particularly in the back seat, that you haven't yet done. So for example, set your gun burst, set your man range. I use 900 because it tends to work. Okay, acquisition source, stuff like that. There are some settings on these pages that are common. So this is common between the front and the back seat, and there's some missile settings that are common as well. But pretty much a lot of this is independent between the two seats. We're both gonna somebody's gonna WOS gun, the CPG's gonna WOS it, and then I'm gonna do it, take it over from them. We're gonna confirm on the IHADs that we get you know, no cautions for elevation limits on the gun. What should happen with the gun is with the pilot helmet sight selected, somebody should pan around with the gun WOSed and actually check that it moves. Now, there's no easy way to do that in DCS. I'd suggest the simplest way is for the back seater to take the gun, and then the front seater to just jump out to the F2 view and check that the gun is moving. And that is probably worth doing while we've got all these desync bugs in DCS. Check it. It does actually, you know, work. So we're going to do gun. We're going to do missile. So actually, the order it's written in is to do rocket next. So we're going to do rocket, and again, quantity we could select what kind of rocket we've got defaulted. So a default to point detonating, and probably quantity 2. And we're both going to check. And in this point, we're also going to check that we get co-op rockets. So that's that needs the CPG to WOS a gun from to WOS the rockets from the TDAC, not their cyclic. If they WOS it on the cyclic, they'll just take the rockets from the pilot, and you'll just kind of fight over them. But if the pilot WOSes rockets and the CPG does WOS rockets from the TDAC, then you'll get co-op. And then you're both going to go to missile and check that you've got what you want. So you probably you want semi-active laser, obviously mode, you know, normally normal. Trajectory, what you want, LRFD. Not sure, haven't really tested this in DCS, whether it makes any difference or how much what your best settings are in DCS. The recommendation is by default to go to the last, actually, which is not what it defaults to. Missile CCDM does not need to be on, and I doubt that will ever have any effect in DCS. SAL select, we've only got one option, then obviously codes we've talked about, and you know, if somebody probably needs to go into code and do some tinkering for manual code entry. So that's your kind of weapon systems checks, is to step through each weapon system one at a time. So, you know, CPG was rockets. Yeah, I've got rockets. Okay, cool. We've got co-op. Now I've got rockets. I've got missiles. Yeah, I've got missiles. Yeah, settings good. And just step through them together. And then once you've done all of that, pop the ground override off. That gets us all the way through to here. Before starting engines, so once you've done that, then you essentially you're now kind of at this point where the checklists come together, and both crew are then together in one flow. And there's a couple of things here that can happen kind of in parallel. Before starting engines, pilot. So this is just a quick run through before you start the engines. You do need to just double check you've sort of put everything back the way it should be. So. NVIS off. The one action step here is to uncage the attitude indicator, which is a bit flaky at the moment, and to bring up the engine pages and perform another control sweep. But I'm just going to go here because I'll show you this IGI check. Now, either person can do this, so it doesn't necessarily need to be the pilot. And essentially what you're going to do for this is you're going to go TSD, again let's take the iHeads away, TSD util on one side, and you're going to go flight page on the other side, and we're just going to check which INU we want basically. So we're going to bring this up and we're going to say, okay, is this all correct? Now, pretty much every other aircraft in DCS, you pretty much can rely on your INUs being spot on. The Apache, that is not true. They are not always spot on. They have differences between the two units. They do drift. They drift a lot at the moment. So this actually is worth doing, and it will affect the symbology that you get and how accurate your inertial data is. The other thing I didn't mention when I first came in here is setting your time. So checking that this is kind of right and just flipping it over. Personally, I tend to work in local a lot of the time. I know that's not a lot of people work in Zulu, but if you kind of want local time, particularly for daylight purposes, sunrise, sunsets, you can flick that over. Is this correct? Okay, are we on a heading of 0008? Well, you just need to know that from where the aircraft is, with 69 feet and 0 and all these kind of things, 20 degrees, etc. Do those look correct? Do we look level? Are we parked at right level? Okay, yeah, we are. Awesome. So the next thing to do is to just go to set and just check, GUI set, that there's no G's showing, which there shouldn't be because you're at 1G, it won't show up. And then the PP button here, if you know where the aircraft's parked, hopefully certainly for Nellis, we'll generate some list of this, just the parking position coordinates, just double check that this actually matches, where you are parked. I have no idea if that can fail in DCS, but other bits of the INU definitely can, so wouldn't be surprised if it can. So we've done that. Util page. This is the sort of checklist point where you actually say, yeah, this is in confidence. So it has turned green, and the value is low enough to use. So 5 meters. Yeah, okay, great. It should be. It gives you guidance there about the maximum discrepancy. We want to check that there's no velocities in hover mode. Now, there are, right? So this is clearly drifted. And then what we want to do is to basically check between the two INUs that the headings match, the altitudes match, the turn rates match, etc. So this is basically just flicking between the two INUs and checking that, that they match. Now, what you'll see when you toggle between these is that there are very minute differences. So, so toggle between them, check that they're, no gross differences, like your heading doesn't jump by 20 degrees when you flip, and then essentially when you get to the bottom, you select the INU with the lowest position confidence. So in other words, the one that shows the best confidence. It also tells you to go back to PP here and toggle between them, which you kind of have to do like this, and toggle and check that your number down here, right, isn't changing. So that's essentially your IGI check. In DCS, what essentially I tend to do is choose, or what's probably the easiest thing to do, is to choose the one that just gives you the most accurate velocities, because at the moment the position confidence always shows the same, but the velocities often are different. So essentially I'm just going to toggle these and be like, well, that says I'm doing 1 knot, that says I'm doing 0, so let's choose INU 2. And if if INU 1 is a bit broken, now would be the time to reset it. That's a sort of fudge for the current DCS mechanisation. Hopefully that will get rid of that once this is fixed. So somebody needs to just do that before we start the engines. But there is a note in the full manual that having the engines on does not kind of break this. So the flow, I guess, is intended that you could be kind of running through the engine starts while someone's doing this if you were short on time. Then we're going to come back. We've done before starting engine checklists. These bits, we now need to do these bits about bringing the engine pages up. So we're going to go menu engine system. So we've got both pages up there, and we're going to do a final control sweep out and bring our controls back to center, and TGTs both say 20 and then not biased and then symmetrical, and then we're going to do the starts. So the engine starts happen down here. Rotor brakes off, lights we've already done as required. Inlet anti-ice is 20 degrees, we don't need them. We're going to go start the engines. So here's the engine start. We're going to start one. So we need to keep an eye on that NG, see if I can get all this in view. There we can. So what we're looking for, the first indication of an NG increase on there on start one. So we're going to go start, and there it is, move to idle. Temperatures below 80 when we start. Get some cautions, which shouldn't happen. We're watching for temperatures coming up. Checking these conditions up here. We've definitely got TGT increase before 45 seconds. We've definitely got NR increasing before 45 seconds because, you know, the rotor's going round and the NR's increasing. We're through that 52%, which is where the starter caution's gone off, which was correct. Temperature's going up. And then temperature's plateaued and it's coming down appropriately. NG's still stabilising. And the power turbine's pretty much stabilised. Okay, so that looks like a good start on one. So we're going to start two. So flick that to start. NG increase, go to idle, temperature's below. Starter caution's on. NG's rising. Power turbine's coming up. Engine's lit off. Temperature's coming up. Temperature's not going to go too hot by the looks of it. Coming up to 52. 52, starter off, which is good. Starter hasn't remained on. Torque's coming to match. Temperature looks like it's plateaued. NR's coming up. Weird torque spike. Temperature starts coming down. NR's stabilising, NG's coming down, power turbine's matched. Good start on two. So we've done two good starts. So we've done, there we go, starting engine, start two. And if you're in the front seat, you know, have those gauges up and, you know, back up your pilot, checking that nothing's going wrong. We can see the system page there, so that's all coming down. And then essentially, so we're here, and those we've done together. So what I kind of didn't sort of say explicitly is that these kind of, once you're at this starting engine point, then you're kind of becoming combined. The starting engine checklist is written for the pilot, but the front seat is probably going to be backing him up and sort of taking an active interest in, you know, the aircraft not catching fire. And then once you get to before taxi check, there is no pilot CPG written here, right? So this is there where the two crew come together and these checklists become a crew level checklist, which is probably easiest done as a challenge and response. So this is the point where if you are in the front seat, the person in the back is going to be like, yes, two good starts. If you're in the front, yeah, I agree, two good starts. And this is where the pilot needs to take directive control of the checklists they want. So we've started the engines, we've got to here, right, the engines are started, we're going to finish off the start engine, so we're just going to go util, anti-ice all off, rotor brakes all off, and then power levers can come up, so we're going to advance the power levers, check we get to 101 NPNR, power levers coming up, got good NR, good NP, No warnings, no cautions apart from the APU. APU's going off. Guard, APU, guard. APU's off. Bleed air is on. That can go away. That can come up. So we've got that. We've got the engine page. We've got what we need. And this is the before taxi checks. And this is where the pilot will be like, right, 2 good starts before taxi checks, please. And the front seater would then be like, okay, I've got checks in my hand. I'm going to read it out to you. Shocks. Back seater removed. Hit anti-ice as required. We can't do these at the moment, really. We'll talk about them in a second. Bleed air was what we just looked at. On and on. Anti-ice as we needed. Processor, that's the front seater, just needs to sort of do that themselves, so read it out. Processor select, I've got primary processor. External lights, we've checked again. We've got white strobes, nothing else required in the daylight. Searchlights off, parking brake, release, and then you're ready to taxi. And then tail wheel, lock, unlock, you check together. And as you taxi away, in the taxi checks, you've got brakes checks. So that's kind of where you come together as a crew, and we'll talk about how those crew level checks get done. Cool, so I hope that's helped just run through what's in the checklists and what some of the kind of cryptic text means, and we'll make another video with 2 crew to talk about crew coordination.